welcome in This Week in Indiana Football, episode number 9. Bye-week episode. It's bye-week, Dustin. For Indiana, at least. Obviously, we got a full slate of Big Ten stuff coming up, but for Indiana, it's bye-week week. If that makes any sense to say.
A reduced Big Ten slate, full Big Ten slate. Only 5 games.
I know I've noticed you're very excited on Twitter to see the schedule be so spread out. You don't have to worry about trying to watch 3 different games at the same time. Instead, you can focus on maybe 1 or 2 at the most, I believe, that are going to be happening at noon this week.
Yeah, I can't remember how it plays out. I think there's 2 at noon, 1 at 3:30, 1 at 4, and then 1 at 7:30 or 8, somewhere in that neighborhood. So to me, like, this is such a great – it's almost like – to me, like daylight savings time. You know, you get that extra hour of sleep. This is like that nice reprieve where you go from 12 games, 14 games, 10 games, down to 5. And I try to do the best job I can since I'm covering all the teams. I watch every game. Now, do I watch all 60 minutes of every game? No. But I might watch a quarter of Penn State, a half of Ohio State, a full game of Indiana, whatever the case might be.
But that's one thing you've said before is that you really love how they have BTN in 60. You get to watch a reduced version of a 3.5, 4-hour game.
Yeah, it's the greatest invention. I just wish that they would come out with the labels in advance. So when I click on my guide, it pops up and tells me what games. So I don't record, Penn State, Villanova 7 different times. But other than that, that's my only complaint for that. But now we can not only do we get only 5 Big Ten games, so you can focus and I can watch all 60 minutes throughout the week of all 5 games. You get 10 teams, so you get to dissect. When you're watching one game, you get 2 teams instead of watching 14 games, 14 teams. And
you finally don't have to worry about saying, oh, how is this team going to do in Big Ten play because they're playing a non-conference opponent. You can actually compare them to who they're going to be going up against in their league and see who those opponents have been playing and how they've done. So you have a lot better idea of how good each team is going to be for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talk about. I don't know how many times I've gone on this show, radio shows, podcasts, talked.
You do like 15, 20 shows, I feel like.
A week. And even written on our website, like, we'll find out this weekend, or we don't really know that much. We're starting to get to know these players, these teams, and it sounds crazy because we're at the halfway point of the season. You'd think, about the quarter of the way in, you'd probably know some stuff. But when you don't have any common opponents, when you're playing FCS or G5 teams, it can be really difficult to tell where a team stands. I mean, Maryland's a great example. We thought that Maryland would give Iowa a fight. They were 4-0 going into that game. They looked really good. In really every game except the Illinois game, they struggled in that one. But a Friday night game on the road, you can kind of dismiss that. But they did not look good last week against Iowa. So there's still a little bit of the verdict still out on a team like Maryland. What's going to happen when they play the Big Ten East? So
it's that effect that not the Penn State effect that I seem to always say, but referencing back how they always destroy Howard, and that seems to for some reason convince everybody that Maryland's good, and then they play some actual competition, and then they turn over the ball 7 different times.
Right. Well, the problem is, I think the problem this year was that Maryland was a little bit more battle-tested than they had been in the past. They beat West Virginia in week 1.
That's true.
They boat raced Howard. They proved that they can come from behind and beat an Illinois team that I know Illinois is 2-4, but 3 of those losses have been in one-possession games, so it's not like they're god-awful.
Yeah. Plus, they have a win against a Nebraska team that is seeming like they're finding their footing a little bit.
Right, exactly. And then I can't think of the other team that they beat on their schedule off the top of my head for whatever reason. It was another G5 team. It was Kent State, a Kent State team that played Iowa pretty well. So I thought we had at least a much better Maryland team. We're going to find out because that was the best team in the Big Ten West, and they still have to play Penn State, Michigan State, and Ohio State. Whew, you can't have more of that.
Well, let me go ahead and set the stage for the rest of the show. We have a couple guests coming on today. One, it's odd. He's right here in the lobby for us, and I say odd because it's an Indiana basketball player, a former Indiana basketball player, and you're like, why are you bringing on a basketball player, a former player, onto a show about football? But I promise you, for those of you who listen to Indiana Sports Beat, Charlie Miller is one of the most knowledgeable sports guys when it comes to not even just things about sports, but about those players and their mental health. And I felt like it was a perfect time to bring on good old Charlie Miller for this week since Indiana's on a bye week. And not only are they on a bye week, but it seems like the most perfectly timed bye week that Indiana could have possibly had, given what they've dealt with so far this season. The expectation was that they would maybe be 4-1, 5-0 at this point. They're 2-3. I know, Dustin, you said that they'd be closer to 3-3 by the time they came into Ohio State than they were to 6-0. But Charlie Miller was about to join us, actually. He looks like he's trying to reconnect with us. But, Charlie, thank you for taking the time to join our podcast right now. I know you've got some stuff going on with camps and training and all that, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes with us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, man. I'm on location.
Oh, looks like he's still trying to come in and out. Charlie, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but whenever we get reconnected with you here in a second, I'm wanting to ask you a few things about specifically like within the players in the locker room. Since you're a former Indiana college athlete, though it was for basketball, your teams throughout the mid to late 90s in basketball, you went through some ups and downs. You never had a fantastic 30-win season that teams always dream of, but you never had a detrimental season either. So if you're able to hear me and give a response, what would you say is the biggest thing right now for players in the locker room going into this bye week and trying to reverse that mindset and block out all the noise that they've been dealing with the past couple of weeks and really since the beginning of the season?
Yeah, John, you asked me a question, and I have a feeling it's more about the bye week and kind of what's going on in the locker room. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what I was saying is, you being a former player, even though it was for basketball, right, and with all the adversity that this team is dealing with, what would you say to them, or what is going through their minds, and how can they get out of this maybe dark place that they're in and try to reverse their fortunes as they have this week to be off before Michigan State next week?
Well, it's going to have to be a big regrouping. I mean, because let's face it, you have not played up to potential. Even though it's a word I don't like to say, you haven't played well, right? I think you're way below expectations. I think it might have been a little too much reading the hype of what they're going to be, and all of a sudden, that's locker room fodder for other programs that have been on top, that are traditional winning teams. We had 2 good seasons. I'm not taking anything away from that. I think that's a game like, first of all, Penn State, I'm more than certain they had that marked on the calendar.
Absolutely, okay? Yes.
Right. So, and I think it was a statement win for them. It was business as usual, but I'm guaranteeing you it was marked off. Right. So with that being said, for me, it's a big regrouping, especially now, fellas. You have this element of a player who just did what? Transferred.
That's true. Right? Yeah, Tim Baldwin.
So now you got to, okay, so I'm walking in a locker room looking to provide some insight, some inspiration. You got to understand the core temperature right now, because that's a teammate you just lost. That didn't just happen. That probably was going on for several weeks. It just happened to have, you just happen to have another game where you're not getting the possessions, you're not running the ball. All of a sudden, what was said preseason is not being met now because of the transfer portal, which I hate. Nothing against that. It makes it very easy for me as a player to say, you know what, I'm not getting what I want. Let me change it. Yeah. So you have a ball. You got your quarterback hurt. You got a player, your second running back who just transferred, if I'm correct.
Yeah, first it was Samson James, and then now followed by Tim Baldwin.
For me, fellas, to be real with you, John, there's nothing other than say, then we got to freaking play. Mm-hmm. Like there's no encouraging words, because this is all about now embodying the experience of the process of loving each other, right? Yep. So you want to say, do unto others as you do to yourself. Do to yourself before you do to others. Now, you got to bring it.
So Charlie, let me ask you this. Whenever you and your teams had to deal with ups and downs, what was the best thing that you were, obviously social media and stuff wasn't really a thing back when you were playing and all that stuff. There was no such thing as the transfer portal. You could transfer, but you had to sit out a year. Correct. I mean, obviously the transfer portal just started this past season. So how did your teams deal with any sort of adversity from the outside? How are they able to regroup and come together whenever things weren't going well?
Well, I mean, you look to, you take it personal. I mean, I think it starts with, there's sometimes meetings outside of coaches. That's happened a lot of times, right? Where you're meeting at a junior or senior's house. If you're underclassmen, you're meeting somewhere off campus and to talk, right? Say, hey, get out what you have to get out as far as if there's any personal issues. We have to find a way to come together. And I've been a part of those on several different locations and stops as a college player and also as a professional player. Because sometimes you have to remove the coaches. Now, this to me has to be player led. I think the coaches are saying all the right things and they're taking on the brunt of what the players aren't doing. Now, this is player led. So being a part of several meetings like that where we got to figure out something. I can give you guys a simple short story. I remember, it was more internal. You play bad against your rivalry like a Purdue in basketball, or leading up to you play bad, and all of a sudden now you got this game called Purdue, and your rivalry comes up. So you have to galvanize, right? You got to figure out, and all of a sudden you play as a band of brothers and you go out and you smack them as if you've never lost a game. It's more psychological than anything. And I think that's what we have to do more so than ever. We have to galvanize. We have to figure out, because it's not going to get easier with our schedule in football from here on out.
And that's the best thing. I'll have Dustin ask the question. I think he's having some connection issues, but I think that's the best thing about the bye week in college football. Is that you do get, if you're having a struggling season the way that Indiana's having right now, you do get the opportunity to just tell yourself, hey, that's in the past. Those 5 games, treat that like a separate season.
That's right.
You can go into Michigan State. It's a rivalry game of sorts. You have the old brass spittoon on the line, so it's a trophy game. It's not like playing Purdue or anything like that. Right, but at the same time, it's a good thing to come back to say, hey, let's get our season back on the right track. Get 1-0, keep this trophy. They already have the old brass spittoon from last year. They actually shut out Michigan State. But getting to keep that, go over to the sideline and take that trophy from whatever little stand they have it on, if they're able to reset their season with that, I think it's a good way to put everything in. It doesn't matter what happened against Penn State, any of those other teams, Iowa. They can easily erase what happened in those first 5 games just by putting it behind them and treating it. And it almost sounds like coach speak what I'm saying. Yeah, but it's real. It's real when the players genuinely need something to boost their spirits like that.
Yeah, because I mean, also you don't know about the small injuries that may hold back a possession or two. I noticed that one of our key defensive players were out. I think that was like a game time decision. Who knows how much that influenced the outcome of the Penn State game? But all of those little things add up. And then you got to also go to the coaches. What are they thinking? They're relying on players who got their first team reps. Now you got to put in players who may not have gotten the first team reps. So you have a whole other dynamic and element to the playing schemes. Then you got to look at their practice plans. Do you have to get now the guys that might be in the 3rd and 4th depth chart? Do they have to get more reps? Right? Because right now it really is a next man up. And you are correct. You have an opportunity. You can say, okay, all these games before, here's a brand new season, but you're going to have to win out. Like, I mean, if you want to be bowl eligible, right, you got to win games. Like, the more victories won't work anymore right now.
Absolutely. Dustin, I know you just had to reconnect. Do you have anything right now?
Yeah, I did have a question for Charlie. I look at the Cincinnati loss and the 3 red zone turnovers. I look at the game against Iowa and you score 6 points. And then I look at this game and you have a shutout against Penn State. Indiana has not scored a touchdown in Big Ten play. I wonder if there is, or maybe not, you get the sense, but is there a possibility that we see some finger pointing, maybe some divisiveness in the locker room? Because the defense through 5 games, in my opinion, has kind of lived up to their end of the bargain, where the offense is not clicking. Something's clearly not working. I'm not saying that there is finger pointing. I'm not in that locker room, but is that something that you think could happen when you get to this point in the season and one side of the ball is not performing as well as the other side?
I think it happens regardless of what are you doing or not, because think about it. Defense, I mean, you can control that, right? You can control how hard you play. you can control flying up the ball. You may not get interception turnovers, but defense is going to do their best. But now offense, that's where you got your talent, right? That's where you got to score the basketball. And they're not doing it. I mean, basketball score the football. And they're not doing it, right? They're not doing it. So I can see some finger pointing. I can see that now, right? You're going to keep that more internal, but I definitely can see that. Yeah. I definitely can see, hey, look, we're taking care of our side of the ball, but we're on the field for the majority of the game. It's 3 and out, but we got to come in and try to score points. So I can definitely see that where that can create tension. And you just hope that it's not going on as much as I'm thinking, but I can see that affecting the offensive side because you have not scored, right? I don't even know how close you've even gotten to score. A touchdown.
Well, another thing too, and we don't have to ask you about this specifically, but sometimes they'll get in the red zone. It's like the coaches are making decisions to not take the points and just take the 3 points sometimes, and the other times they're taking the field goal and they shouldn't be, and then that's on coaching. But I was going to say, go ahead, Charlie. If you got
no. Think about it. Well, that is on coaching, but they're going off of what? They're going off of the results that they have seen, and really you can't go off of predictability. That's what productivity shows you. Well, we've been productive in the red zone, right? And so we feel confidence of running the ball. We feel confidence on throwing the ball to a screen out wide receiver or running back. Let him get yards on catch. After the catch to score. You can't say that. So right now we have to get 3 points. We got to score by any means necessary. So that puts pressure on play calling, which then ultimately as a fan, it's like, well, we're being conservative. Well, do you blame them? If you look at the details, if you're watching film, they have no choice.
That's true. And I think before we let you go, Charlie, I think you hit the nail on the head with the fact that they talked about all this LEO mentality and bringing this culture last season during the COVID year. I think we're absolutely going to see over the course of the next few weeks or just throughout the rest of the season if they're really living by the LEO, because if you can't go through adversity, then there's something wrong, and that's gonna affect recruiting more so than anything else.
Well, and also it can affect it, and it can also help it, right? Because sometimes, I'm not saying I'm right, but like sometimes, yes, you want to win, but you want to play for a winning coach. You want to play for somebody and a coaching staff that what I call GPS, man. They want a game plan for success. Hey, we're going to have and be transparent. Hey, our wins will be predicated on how well we play. But hey, my connections from here with you after the 4 years of IU can go on forever, right? And the old adage of an athlete is like, hey, the college you go to, whatever school you play at, that's a 4-year journey, but the next 40 years might be carved out because of networking opportunities, right? So you know how much of that somebody might go on recruiting, especially when you're 17, 18, because you do want to win. Your ego's more driving your decisions because you don't want to be around a losing program. But yet I think it might hurt because you can also reflect back and say, hey, we started off bad, but yet look what came into play. Now it's about trust in action. Now it's about faith in action. Now they have to put it all together. And I think this is really, to me, the combination of that adversity, tension that has been building up for the next couple of years. And I think it might be a bubble that's going to burst in a positive way. We just might have to wait and see for that.
That's true. And the only way, like you said, the only way we'll ever be able to know is to see what happens in these next couple of weeks after they get back on the field. So, Charlie, thanks again for taking a few minutes. I know you got to get back to some training. You got a lot of basketball stuff going on. And we'll see you on Monday for Indiana Sports Beat, as always.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on, man. Thank you, guys.
See you, Charlie.
All right.
All right, that was Charlie Miller. Always joins us for Indiana Sports Beat. One of the most knowledgeable sports guys that Jim has on his regular show, not just for basketball, but he just has that aura about him that he just has wisdom. Do you get that feeling, Dustin? I don't want to feel like I'm kissing ass, but because that's what it's seeing. I feel like that's what it's coming off as.
No. I think Charlie is incredibly knowledgeable. He's been a student athlete at a high level program in a blue blood school, right? We're talking about basketball, or he's a basketball player but we're talking about football. But he brings a new perspective. Plus, he's got a ton of energy. I love that energy.
Absolutely.
As much as I've been on the show with Jim, I don't think I've ever been on when Charlie's been on. And man, I love his energy. He's confident. He has a lot of energy. Like, I drink 2 or 3 cups of coffee every day, and I don't have that much energy. So you got some now, yeah. So I don't think that's kissing ass. I think he's incredibly knowledgeable. That's what it is.
Speaking of energy, bringing in former walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver Mitchell Paige, now here to talk some more Indiana football. Mitchell, straight out of South Carolina or North Carolina? I can't remember.
South Carolina.
South Carolina. Okay, yeah. Just obviously former Hoosier, former Wild. We've had him on before as a little segment. Dustin wasn't able to be on. But things were a lot different back whenever we tried to have him last time. Now things are kind of on the downward spiral, and we were just talking with Charlie, a former basketball player from the Bob Knight era, the end of the Bob Knight era, just to get his perspective on, even though he wasn't a football athlete, just being somebody, how to deal with adversity as a college athlete. We feel like he was able to provide a unique perspective for that.
Yeah, I caught the tail end. I love the energy, absolutely. And he definitely brings up some interesting points as a program that even now I'm starting to appreciate about my time at IU, and guys on the team now will appreciate in a couple of years. But unfortunately for them right now, it's about wins and losses, and we got a lot to talk about.
So just off the top, the biggest issue of anything is the offense. I mean, it came to fruition, or to a T, against Penn State. You get shut out for the first time in 21 years. Everyone's been screaming about Nick Sheridan's from the get-go, but that's at the highest it's ever been. And just as somebody who was on a very dynamic offense and has been commenting about offenses that Indiana's been playing, what are your thoughts just in general about this offense right now?
Yeah, I was trying to come up with some nice things to say. Usually I try to be pretty positive, but they were horrific on Saturday. I think at every position, receivers dropping balls, quarterback throwing it to nobody, offensive line, airmailing blocks, O-laying blocks, and running backs that I guess you can't say they don't run hard when there's nowhere really to go, but it was a complete it was a disappointment top to bottom. I thought it was very boring play calls. I know the only thing that I actually liked, I think, is some stuff that nobody else likes, is the runs up the middle on first down. When you look at where they were typically on second down, it was second and very manageable. The problem that I had with it was once you got to that second and manageable and you get to you have a positive play on the first one. All right, your whole playbook opens. Let's dial up some shots.
Yeah, it's like they're not doing. They never went, to my knowledge, consecutive running plays after they had gotten a good gain on first down.
Yeah. I mean, and anytime we saw it, especially with Western Kentucky, and I was talking with Jim on his show about this, when an offense gets into a rhythm and they get a positive play, we used to do this to teams. As soon as we would get 2 yards, we were back on the ball running another play. And now the defense gets on its heels and you start getting vanilla defenses. And Indiana doesn't do that. I don't want to say I was yelling at the TV, but I might have been yelling at the TV. I mean, I know it's loud in there, but we're snapping the ball with 1 second left. And all that does is allow defensive linemen to pin their ears back and make it even harder on an offensive line that's already struggling. So I thought it was extremely disappointing from top to bottom. But I was encouraged after Tom Allen's press conference yesterday, I guess it is now. But there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. And thank goodness for this bye week.
Dustin.
I've been saying this for the past couple weeks, and I want to know Mitchell Paige's perspective on this because I might be way off base. I feel like Walt Fillier was a much bigger part of that offense and how they were able to execute than maybe we gave him credit, because I felt like on the bubble screen, he's a guy that can catch the ball, take a 2-yard gain and turn it into 8 yards, 15 yards, 25 yards. And I don't know that Indiana has that kind of player, and his ability to do that kind of opened things down the field for guys like Peyton Hendershot and Ty Freifogel. we're obviously not seeing that now. Am I reading too much into that, or do you think that he was a much bigger piece and Indiana has had trouble replacing him?
That's very good, Dustin. When the reason that guys like Ty Freifogel and some of the bigger receivers can really get open downfield is because you're running the ball well. And bubble screens, at least in Coach Wilson's playbook, are an extension of the run game. That's a way to get it in the quarterback's hands and get it to the sideline way faster than a running back could get there. And when you don't have somebody that maybe can't block out there, I don't want to say it's that because there's a lot of the same guys, but somebody that can catch the ball and make something happen, it's a huge loss. And I was hoping DJ Matthews might be able to kind of mold into that role, but our offenses were really good when I was there because of guys like Shane Wynn that were kind of unsung heroes. Shane was loud, but he was small. And he looked like he was not really doing that much because of guys like Cody Latimer or Kofi Hughes. But when you're able to get 6 yards on first down on a easy little stick route, you open up so much more in your playbook. And they don't have that at all right now. They don't even have a prayer to have anything like that at the current moment.
We were talking about the run game earlier, and obviously yesterday you had the announcement from Tim Baldwin that he's putting his name in the transfer portal. Second running back to go into the transfer portal. You also got De'Lon McCullough, who wasn't who didn't recruit these guys. And my mind's gone into the idea that they don't respect. I'm not saying they don't respect McCullough, but maybe with the fact that they're not seeing the snaps that they want. Samson James already knew when he wasn't named the starter that wasn't what he wanted. Obviously, now Tim Baldwin, he seemed fine with being the backup, but as the games have gone on, his snaps diminished. He had two crucial fumbles, one that ended up actually partially costing. There's a lot of things that cost Indiana that Cincinnati game, but it didn't help that you fumble on the 2-yard line when you could have gotten a lead. Do you think that there's a locker room issue specifically with the running backs? And if so, what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is if he's leaving because of De'Lon McCullough, good, get him down the road because De'Lon McCullough is one of the best coaches and best people that I've ever been around. You want to talk about energy. He's a constant positive wrecking ball. Even if you're having a horrible day, he'll come in and he's driving the program in a positive way. But I don't want to sound like a 70-year-old man here, but I didn't come out at the time of like Instagram and Twitter and these kids having recruiting videos and all this. And you go to a place like Indiana that's now starting to get some of these higher ranked recruits where they're starting to really see love from fans telling them how great they are. And you go somewhere like Indiana that doesn't have the LSU name or the Georgia name, and you don't start right away, it's hard to be on Instagram or Twitter for these kids after that because you might have your cousin back home or your buddy saying, well, why aren't you playing? And I think it goes a lot to just how the kind of current world is where people just want to be given stuff. And unfortunately, as we get better and as Coach Allen continues to recruit, I see this is something that will happen more and more often, and it's something you have to live with, and the new guys have to step up.
Back in 2016, Mitchell, I don't want to compare the two seasons, but I feel like your team kind of went through something similar where you went through a string of losses. You were at 3-4, if I remember correctly, and you were trying to get to back-to-back bowl eligibility. Was there ever, or what was the locker room like when you have to go in and win those last 3 out of 5 games? And in Indiana now, we're still in the early portion of the season, but I get the sense that this thing can kind of spiral out of control. You guys were in those games. You were much more competitive than Indiana has been in games against Penn State and Iowa. But what's the locker room like? How important is it for players to kind of go in there and lead it and rally the team for the last 2 months of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a team, it's hard for that to happen in a college football season in the Power 5. The games just come too fast. Practices come too fast. you don't really have time to think about, God, we were bad against Penn State. But on one side of the ball, it absolutely can happen because you're with those guys all the time. Like, we wouldn't see the defensive guys all the time. They're on the other side of the building. But I remember we were not as bad as Indiana has been to start the season, not even close. But the year before that, we were a top offense. I mean, we scored 40 points a game or 35 points a game, whatever it was. And now we were only scoring 20 or 22 points a game halfway through the season. So I know what it's like to go from kind of a powerhouse to people looking at you like, what's going on? And there has to be leaders. I can remember having a meeting. It was just the players, and I still remember Xander Diamant, who wasn't even really getting to play that much.
Xander Diamant. Everybody loves Xander Diamant.
I mean, he was just an absolutely unbelievable leader without even really trying, just extremely charismatic. And he brought us all in there, not a captain, not playing, and is like, okay, what are we even doing? Like, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. But there's a standard that Indiana football plays offense with or at. I don't think it's either of those words, but there's a standard for Indiana football offense, and we're not even close to what it is. And whether it worked or it didn't, I think we were a little bit better and wound up getting to the bowl game and losing to Utah or whatever. But it takes somebody to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we need to stay together if we're not. If nobody else wants us to be good, kind of us talking right now, the media think we suck. So the only people that want us to be good is us. And unfortunately, hopefully they're watching and reading, because you better use it, because you have been horrible. And somebody needs to tell you in your own locker room that it's time to turn things around.
Mitchell, I made a comment during the game on Twitter that I thought Delon McCullough would make a better offensive coordinator than Nick Sheridan. You don't have to agree with me on that. That's not what I'm going to ask you. But if he were the offensive coordinator,
hold on, you're going to let him off the hook that easy?
Yeah, I was starting to sweat.
Being a former player, I don't want him to have to make a comment or to say his stance on that. But what I do want to ask him is, if Delon McCullough were the offensive coordinator, do you think he would run a Kevin Wilson style offense?
I do not. Fortunately or unfortunately, there are very few people that can run an offense like Kevin Wilson did. He was extremely gifted and had a different way of seeing things than pretty much anyone I've ever met. So I don't think that it's realistic for Indiana fans to expect the kind of offense that we got with him, because it also has its drawbacks. Defense would not play the way that they play, just because we've seen that already. We had good players on our defense. It just doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't bode well for both sides of the ball. So I'm not sure what kind of offense he would run. I assume it would be aggressive. He would be very physical and aggressive. He's the kind of guy that's not scared of anybody, and make sure you know that he's not scared of you. So it's an interesting thought for sure. And I'm not going to say anything about anybody's job. I don't like talking about.
Yeah, I didn't want to put you in that position.
Yeah, something needs to change. Whether it's Coach Sheridan opening it up and saying whatever, screw it. And I thought he did when Tuttle came in. So maybe it's something. I don't know.
I wondered if he just – and this is mainly because he's an inexperienced coordinator. And I'm not saying he's a bad coordinator. I think maybe he would benefit from being at a lower-level school right now. But I feel like his issue right now is that he doesn't know how to call plays when they don't involve Penix throwing the ball. I feel like he's been groomed to try to make Penix as good as he could be. And with Penix – and now he's dealing with another injury – when Penix at full strength was able to do a lot, but it seems like the more that he's come back, the more limited he's been. And the only time that we've seen success through the air is when Penix is connected with somebody downfield. He doesn't make the small throws. And when he's trying to do that, it's like he's throwing rockets. I've made that comment with Dustin after the Iowa game. When he tries to do short balls, it's like either the wide receivers don't have good hands or he's throwing the ball way too hard. And so back to my original point, I just don't understand why Nick Sheridan hasn't been able to adjust now after being the coordinator for a couple of years and also having to deal with Jack Tuttle a little bit, why he can't seem to game plan around something other than Penix. And I could be way wrong about that, but that's just my thought.
Yeah, I think it's just hard to – I don't want to say he's game planning for Penix. I think he's game planning to beat a team, but when they're talking through the week, Penix is up. Penix and Jack are up in the coaches' meeting rooms talking about what plays they like. So he's trying to put Michael in a place that he's comfortable, and unfortunately, it just hasn't looked like Michael's been comfortable in any play outside of Western Kentucky. So when you're up there calling plays, I think it's like Penix has been uncomfortable, so then Nick Sheridan gets uncomfortable, and then Penix can probably feel that Sheridan's uncomfortable, so he gets even more uncomfortable. And it's just kind of been a tornado of uncomfortable, and things just get worse and worse and worse, and that's what eventually it comes to a head, and you look pitiful on national TV in a stripe out in Penn State.
Dustin?
I was just going to ask, do you think that this is going to be very cliche and dumb, so I apologize, but with football being a game of inches, being right, between the ears, do you think the way they played against Iowa and how things went so wrong in the first 30 minutes of that game, really the first 10 minutes of that game, do you think that's affected the mentality of this team and how they play call, maybe how Nick Sheridan is play calling?
I can't say yes for sure, but this is the first time that they've really faced adversity since Sheridan's been the play caller.
Yeah, that's true.
Last year they got hot and beat some teams, caught some teams at the right time, whatever you want to say. And when they were down 35-0 against Ohio State, or 28-0, Ty Freifogel makes some unbelievable plays and gets him back into the game. So he's never really had to make his players get into the right spot, if that makes sense. He's never had to put guys in the right spot because Wap was making plays. Penix was he was still only 55% last year. He was kind of just throwing it all over the place. And guys were just making plays. And sometimes you get hot like that. And they rode the wave, and Twitter was a great place to be for the Indiana Hoosiers last year. They were all over ESPN on game day. Everybody's telling them how good they are. And when it's 70 and sunny, it's really easy to think you're really good. And when you throw 14 pick sixes in the first two drives against Iowa, that is hard to oh gosh, we got to do something. And then nothing's happened, and still nothing's happened. And now Twitter is kind of a dangerous wasteland that all these guys are on, and people telling them they stink. I'm sure they go to classes and people talk about how bad the offense is. They know who Michael Penix is when he walks into a class. Mm-hmm. And this is – I heard Charlie talking about this is where you find out the LEO – and I think you were talking about it a little bit too, John. What does that really mean? Because there's a chance they could be 2-10 with their schedule. Their schedule doesn't get any easier.
Right.
It don't get any easier. They might not win another game if they play. They won't win another game if they play like they did against Penn State. No chance. So something significant has to happen. And if you start listening to the outside world, it'll happen quick.
So before we let you go, I know I told you we'd only be on here unless you want to stick around. But before we let you go,
I'm sure you got better guests than me. I just like rambling.
No, we appreciate it. But just what do you think going forward? You don't have to give me predictions per se, but what do you if they were to have success against Michigan State 2 weeks from this past Saturday, what's it look like against them? You think?
Yeah.
Obviously, the offense is going to score points. That's number one. But
yeah, I think. Yeah, God, please, I can't watch 60 minutes more of that nonsense. I almost had to turn the TV off, and that is just not me. But I think the thing that gives me the most hope is Tom Allen, how serious he was in the press conference about this is not acceptable, and that's. LEO, love each other. There can be some hard love too. You can love somebody and tell them how bad they're doing and how much better they need to do, or else bad things are going to happen. You can still love somebody in that way. So I was very happy to watch that 15-minute little opening that he gave. That tells me that it's going to set a good tone for the next 2 weeks as they get ready for Michigan State. And I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it because it needs to happen, and my head will explode. I want Michael Penix to be okay and be the team leader that the team needs him to be, but we need to see Jack Tuttle. We need Jack Tuttle to start and play every snap and pray that Nick Sheridan will take the reins off. I thought he was just fantastic when he had to come in against Penn State. And I know that it's 28-0 already, and you can say Penn State isn't trying that hard or whatever, but, I mean, he was accurate. He had some velocity on his ball. He was getting guys to the line of scrimmage, and he looked like a Division I Big Ten starting quarterback. And I think you have to give him the reins and let the dogs hunt a little bit, and I think that's the recipe for success. Is it at Michigan State? No, it's
at home.
Homecoming.
So hopefully a good crowd, too, with the fact that they have the homecoming addition to it, because other than that, I'm tired of – I say this, I think, every week, and I should probably stop, but the fan base is very fragile when there's no success, and you don't see those stands fill out.
Yeah, absolutely they should be. They should be.
Indiana should be fragile.
Should be fragile.
Okay.
After these couple weeks, especially how terrible they were against Iowa, we're begging, myself included, begging, pack the rock. And then in the first week, you look like a kindergarten team. Who's going to want to go watch that? Indiana hasn't been good. We were explosive when I was there. We went to some bowl games, but we never threatened the top 20. We threatened top 20 teams and beating them. But you have to build on this success to have a fan base that has confidence in you the way that some of these SEC schools do. Or the reason that Ohio State fans come is they've watched Ohio State be good since ever. They want to watch that. And Indiana hasn't had that. And unfortunately this year they haven't given fans that were kind of on the fringe and starting to dabble a little bit and get excited. There's been no reason to get excited. So I think Indiana – I'm hoping for a good crowd against Michigan State, but they need to send a message to the fan base, to themselves, to the country that we're still good. We've sucked, but our defense is fantastic, which they continue to be. Yeah. I think they're good in special teams. They got the kick block, but that happens. They have athletic guys too. Do something on offense and show that I believe there's top 20 talent in Bloomington, and it's time that they let them go a little bit. Let's see something. That's from a fan's perspective.
I think it's good from your former player perspective for you to understand as well that, and I'm sure it's different when you're on the team. I know you're a former player, but when you are a player, I'm sure it's frustrating seeing half-empty stands. But it's also, I'm sure there's more people like you and players as well that'll understand that they're not going to fill the stands. You don't give them a reason to. It's not like this is a tradition-laden program.
No.
So we appreciate you coming on, Mitchell. If you have any closing comments, feel free to give them. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Anybody watching, just give a couple more weeks. There's good stuff coming. I can feel it. Tom Allen I got fired up yesterday watching him talk, and I think we get some Tuttle time. Good things are coming in 2 weeks.
There we go.
Well, thank you, Mitchell. I'm sure we'll see you when Jim does his Monday evening quarterbacks again next week. I know he took off this past week, but we'll see you then. And thanks for joining us again, Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, John and Dustin. Looking forward to being on again soon, hopefully. Talking.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely have you on when things are turning bright.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.
All right. See you, Mitchell. All right, so off to a bang. We're already 44 minutes in, and we've been hearing the wisdom from Charlie Miller and then just Mitchell Paige, and a lot of good things to say. Keeping the positivity while also dealing with negativity.
I think what you're looking for there is realism, right? Like
absolutely.
What Mitchell, he's not sugarcoating anything. He's saying this has to get better. This has looked awful. I don't want to watch it as a fan, but there are reasons to be optimistic. And I think that's a really good point. You've seen, he's right. The defense has played outstanding. And that's why I asked the question to Charlie Miller about whether or not he thought there might be some finger pointing between the defense and the offense right now, because you can't be touchdownless in Big Ten play and expect to get off the hook. You can't come away in a game that you should have won against Cincinnati. I mean, let's face it. Indiana they're 2-3. They should be 3-2. They should have won that game against Cincinnati, even though Micah McFadden got tossed. You don't make those 3 red zone errors, and you are 3-2. And so I think when you compound that, so you have those turnovers, you have the 2 games where you didn't score a touchdown in. Those are your 3 losses. And like Mitchell's, this is a team that potentially could go 2-10. I agree with that, because they still have to play Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. Purdue's a rivalry game, and they're looking better on the defensive side of the ball. Rutgers has obviously improved. You don't know what you're going to get. We don't know. We talked about Maryland earlier in the show. Who knows what we're going to get there? They play Minnesota, who has been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like
the only team that I think, if I were just going through and marking wins and losses, guaranteed, the only one that I would mark as a guaranteed win, and it's not even on their schedule, is Northwestern. They're the only team that right now I don't feel like has much hope at all to win a game on their schedule left.
Well, I think
not that I want to turn this into a Northwestern thing, but just to compare it to
I don't think
how
you're
tough
wrong.
the Big Ten is.
Right, yeah, it's tough from top to bottom. You got to bring your lunch every single week, because one of these teams can get you. I mean, that's how it's always been in the Big Ten, but even more so this year. So, yeah, I don't think there was dealing with the negativity. I mean, I think that was just both Charlie and Mitchell gave us very real outlooks as to what's happening right now, and I appreciated it. Those were both really fun interviews.
Let's go ahead and get into. We have one fan question today from Elijah Butler. He sends in, and this can hopefully get us talking before we get into our Week 6 pick'ems and our preview for the schedule coming up on Saturday. But he says this: do you think Indiana's disappointing season means last year's breakout was an anomaly in a weird COVID season, or do you think Indiana is still on the rise and this season is just a short-term setback? I think it's a loaded question, and it could go a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
But I think right now, the high expectation was, the majority of it was based on how good people thought Michael Penix was going to be. And we can blame it on play calling all we want, but a factor of it is Michael Penix himself. And I don't think, including this, and this includes me, I don't think many fans realized it, but I don't think Michael Penix from the beginning of this season was at what he was at all last year. And I don't think even if he didn't get hurt against Penn State, I don't know that we were going to see all-star Michael Penix the rest of this season if he wasn't hurt right now. And I think that right now, I don't think it was an anomaly because of COVID. I think Indiana definitely had a chance to be good. You're returning so much of your personnel that was successful. And when the key cog on your team is struggling, your quarterback, that feeds into the rest of the team, and specifically the offense. The defense has been fantastic. We've obviously talked about that. I mean, I think the pinnacle of knowing how good this defense was that goal line stand when you're already down 21 or 24 to nothing, and you don't back down and let Penn State score again. That's when I realized how good the Indiana's defense actually is. And so they're obviously holding up their end of the bargain. I think this offense just has to figure it out. And Dustin, I'll let you weigh on this too. I'm just trying to finish up my babble. But I think Indiana is, as a program, is still on the rise. They can definitely still get to bowl eligibility, get that bowl win that has been avoiding them for whatever reason these past several seasons that they've gone to a bowl game. And they can still win 7 or 8 games. I'm not saying they're going to, but you're going to get a fresh start with Jack Tuttle on against Michigan State. And I'm not saying that's going to solve all of their problems, but if you have a confident guy under center that can help get the rest of the offense going and give opposing defenses a reason to be ready, that already helps you significantly more than what you've been dealing with these first 5 weeks. So that's where I stand. I hope I answered the question good, but
I'm going to answer this question a little bit differently and kind of be all over the place. So bear with me. I'll try to keep this brief. I think it depends on how you define anomaly, right? Because I think you can say, based on what we've seen right now, we were ready to pencil Indiana in as the second or third best team in the Big Ten East. And I don't think that's the case. I think they're still a long way. I think Michigan State.
I agree.
I think Michigan is back in front. There's no question, obviously, that Penn State's back in front. So now you're talking about Indiana being down with Maryland and Rutgers. And both of those programs are improved, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that them being a consistent bowl team is an anomaly? No. I think they have enough talent on both sides of the ball to get it figured out. I think that they can still be a bowl-eligible team. So, the expectation was they're going to be now the top contender to Ohio State year in, year out. I think you can say that's an anomaly credited to the weird COVID.
Oh, year but I don't know that, at least from a realistic person standpoint, that anyone thought that every year Indiana was going to challenge Ohio State.
Well, I mean, I don't know about every
year because here's the thing. Everyone goes through quarterback issues, even Ohio State. And obviously Ohio State's still great, but when Indiana loses Penix or Tuttle, whoever it may be, I mean, there's going to be a learning curve there. And so you're always going to have different personnel coming in, and it's going to be at different levels for each team.
Correct, but here's the problem. It's not just the running game. It's the wide receivers dropping passes. It's the offensive line not being nearly as talented or deep or explosive or experienced as we thought that they were. It's the running backs not being able to run the ball. I mean, this is a team that ranks second to last in the Big Ten. We thought we would see a much improved rushing attack. They rank 13th in the Big Ten, and they're averaging just like 3.3 yards per carry. I can't remember what it is specifically, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. And you look at some of the teams that they've played. I mean, yeah, they've played a really good Iowa team. They played a good Cincinnati team. They played a good Penn State team. But you have to be able to run the ball. Now, we will see this team. Well, maybe we won't, actually. I'm going to stop in my tracks and redirect my thought as we go because I'm just thinking Michigan has a good defense. Michigan State's defense, not great, but it's formidable.
Now, a good comparison right there. I don't mean to stop you, but you got Michigan State gave up the same amount of points to Western Kentucky. And like I said, that's a small comparison, but it's just what comes to mind.
What was the score? That was like 42 to 16.
48 to 31. Oh, at halftime? Oh, you're saying personnel was different. Okay, that makes sense. So obviously, I didn't watch the game, so
I didn't watch much of the game, so I don't know if Michigan State sent in B personnel or what. But there was probably a level to Mel Tucker hates it, but I think that at some point they're still learning too, right? So I think at some point in that Michigan State game, they got to a level of comfort, and then Western Kentucky was able to say, "We're not done just yet," and throw the ball all over the field a little bit and get into the end zone. So I don't know if it's a direct comparison because Indiana was in a dogfight for most of that game. They jumped up to an early 14-0 lead or 14-3 lead, whatever it was, and then from the rest of the way, it was all hands on deck. So that's a long-winded question. I think that this team is still capable of being a consistent bowl contender, but in terms of being up there in the conversation with teams like Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, we'll have to wait and see. We'll see what this team's response is in the final 7 games of the season.
I think that Tom Allen and his however long his tenure is with Indiana, I don't think I ever expected, unless Indiana were to miraculously bring in a Nick Saban, which won't ever happen. But backing up, under Tom Allen, I think the expectation is where the program is right now. I don't think the level of the program will ever. Did I say program?
Think you
sound like a 40-year-old man.
You sound like a SEC football coach. Our program. All right, continue.
Our program.
Continue.
Oh, you're good. I interrupted you, so I deserve that. So, I think the level. I don't think, and like I said, myself included, I don't think anyone should ever expect Indiana to be at the level of Ohio State or Michigan, where they're able to bring in the top level guys from high school every single year and be able to compete for a Big Ten championship every year. I think you should be able to do that once every 4 or 5 years. But I think the floor under Tom Allen's tenure, however long it may be, should be bowl eligibility and somewhere the mean somewhere between 8 and 9 wins. A lot like in Iowa. Iowa has, I don't remember the last time Iowa missed a bowl game. Obviously, they didn't play in one last year because of a COVID, because they didn't, I don't think they wanted to or they couldn't, something like that. But Iowa, every 3 or 4 years, is competing for a Big Ten championship. Obviously, this year being one of them. And a few years ago, they were doing just that as well against a Michigan State team, if I'm not mistaken, who ended up playing in the college football playoff. But those years in between, you always see Iowa with like 7 or 8 wins, playing in the Music City Bowl, Holiday Bowl, whatever it may be. And if you can win some of those bowl games, that further justifies what Tom Allen's doing. They haven't gotten that bowl win, as we've mentioned several times previously. So back to the very beginning of this question, and we can move on from this. I do think Indiana's breakout season, I don't know if you have to call last year's season the breakout season, because I feel like that may have happened already. The year they were 8-4 and played in the Tax Slayer Bowl and should have beaten Tennessee and gotten a 9th win, that was the breakout season. Last year, they followed it up by beating all of the major programs in the Big Ten East minus Ohio State.
Right.
And so this year, last season was not an anomaly from the chance that they haven't broken out, because that already happened. But I do think that they're taking a step back right now. They can reverse that. I don't know that they will, but I think Indiana is kind of, and Tom Allen being in the program now for however long it's been, I think he's already setting that standard. I think at this point, I think if Tom Allen misses a bowl, 5-7 is considered a disappointment.
I would say so, yes.
In any season, I'm not just talking about this season, but any time. And maybe that's a dumb take, because obviously every team wants to get to a bowl,
right?
But I mean, if 6-6 is your floor, and you're not, and you're improving that, and every year after you go 6-6, you improve that, and then maybe go back down. I think that should be the standard set by the Tom Allen era at Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good standard to set. I mean, I would go below that. As long as you're not finishing 2-10 or 3-9, I think that you're probably in a fairly healthy place being competitive, because when you have that kind of turnover at a place like Indiana, it can go south pretty quickly, because you have to rebuild and restart everything from scratch. He's trying to get more consistency with the way he's recruiting, and I think that can happen. But I don't like, if you were to tell me, lay out the plan and say Tom Allen's going to be at Indiana for 15 years. They get to 11 bowl games. They're in the Big Ten race. I don't know if they're winning it, but they're in the Big Ten race 3 times. I think we would take that. And so that's why
absolutely. Especially in the East.
I don't think that they have to be bowl eligible every single year. I just think it needs to be 4 out of every 5 years.
That's true. Because I mean, even Mark D'Antonio at his best had some teams that didn't make bowl eligibility. Right. And the reason I use Michigan State is it seems like Indiana's always, at least in the Big Ten East, compared to Michigan State in terms of where they can be and what their ceilings and floors are.
And I have no idea why that is, because Michigan State is
I think it's because
has been a good program for a long time.
I think it's more about the players that they get, though. Michigan State's not out getting the same players that Michigan's getting.
Well,
if that makes sense.
No.
Maybe I'm
correct, but usually, I mean, I would still put Michigan State in the category above Indiana.
And I would too, but I think that the comparison makes sense at its base component, I guess. But what do I know? I'm just a lowly 24-year-old acting like a 44-year-old saying program. Speaking of dad problems, aren't you wearing a Smedium shirt right now?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I got to get the guns out. It's either this or work out, and I don't feel like breaking a sweat unless I'm eating something spicy. So,
both rocking the blue today. I was showing you before. I'm wearing this Buffalo Blue Jays.
Yeah, this is from my time down in Orlando when I worked at Disney Springs, is what House of Blues retail associate.
Yeah. Yeah, so the story of the Buffalo Blue Jays, my sibling got me this shirt. He just moved to Buffalo. And the Toronto Blue Jays were playing in Buffalo, which is, I guess it was a temporary name they were going by because Toronto couldn't play in their home country because of COVID reasons. So this is almost a novelty to have something like this, I feel like.
It's going to be a collector's item.
A collector's item, yeah. I'm not a baseball fan necessarily, and even more specifically, I could care less about Toronto, but
you showed you showed that to me, and I have not watched. Well, that's not true because the Braves are on at the bar. I probably watched 12 innings of baseball this entire year.
Before we get into the Week 6 schedule, while we're off topic, for those who don't listen to Indiana Sports Beat, I don't know if we mentioned it on there, but if we did, you may have heard this, but Dustin had his first taste of Zaxby's last week. And
I
you did make the
yes.
claim. You did say it was better than Chick-fil-A, if I remember correctly, right?
Oh my God. Yes, leaps and bounds ahead of Chick-fil-A. I think Chick-fil-A, here's my most controversial take is I think Chick-fil-A is wildly overrated. Like, I think it's crazy.
It's absolutely overrated, especially since, I don't know if you ever had the Popeyes chicken sandwich, but ever since that came out, I think it proves the overration of Chick-fil-A.
Here's what I have to say. I've vacationed in the South. I've lived in the South. I've been Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, all over, Mississippi, Louisiana. I don't understand why Chick-fil-A is so popular in the South because there's so much. You can get better fried chicken at a gas station, and I'm not lying about
that. I mean, you're definitely right. I think part of it with the South in particular is especially because of how we're not going to make this a political thing, but because of how conservative the South is, and Chick-fil-A kind of aligns themselves with that. I think that's part of the allegiance is with that. I believe that.
It could be. I mean, I don't know. And I based on taste, so I'm not going because one restaurant votes red or blue.
Yeah.
What I will say is I think that a big factor of that is also the customer service is top notch. I will give them that. And the cookies and cream milkshake is solid too. But in terms of stacking up chicken sandwiches, like I would just there's a fried chicken place attached to my apartment complex. I just walk down there and get my fried chicken. There's no need to ever go to Chick-fil-A. The only reason I stopped at Zaxby's the other day was because the line to Panda Express was wrapped around the building like 8 times. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to have Chinese food. I'll try this Zaxby's and see what the hubbubaloo is about.
It's just crazy to me that you've lived there for, I don't know how long you've lived there, but the fact that you're in the heart of fried chicken country and hadn't had Zaxby's. I
probably eat out. I support local businesses or try to support local restaurants. So I probably eat out like once a week. I probably eat fast food 2 or 3 times a year. Like it's not often.
That's wild. That's wild. So before we continue to stay off topic, this is probably gonna be our longest episode. So hopefully you're sticking with us. Let's go ahead and get into our week 6 schedule and pick'ems. Man, and I am so aggravated with myself right now because
I would be.
Every time I go against Dustin, I'm 0-6. I have a 6-game
deficit.
Deficit. I guess that's how you say that. And it's because obviously that I haven't gotten anything right where I've gone against you. And you were on fire last week in general, not even just with your picks for who would win, but it seemed like every hot take you had was on the money last week.
It was. I come out with a list of bold predictions, and usually I don't know how this works out, but I usually come up with like, I don't know, depending on the number of games, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 10. So it's either I'm going to get 5 to 7 of those right, or I'm going to get 5 to 7 of those wrong and look like a complete idiot.
And of course, you only hear about it when you're wrong.
Yeah, well, and I always tweet it or text it to friends when I'm really right, and I just ignore it when I'm wrong. So that's how that works for me.
Because for some reason you like to continue to point out to me specifically that Indiana was closer to 3-3 than 6-0, even though I never made that claim.
Everybody said I was crazy for thinking that, and
I never said you were crazy.
Now they need to win. They need to beat a ranked Michigan State team in order to get to 3-3. I'll point out.
Here's the thing, though. Even though I thought 3-3 was a possibility, I didn't think it was realistic for one. If it happened, or 2-3, whatever it is right now, I didn't think it was going to be in the fashion that it was. I didn't think we were going to have all these offensive issues. And I think that's where the big problem really comes in. If Indiana was going to be 3-3, it was going to be a close loss to Iowa, a close one to Cincinnati, which it was kind of close. They really should have had it. And then, no one thought they were going to get shut out 24-0, I don't think, to Penn State.
And to let the cat completely out of the bag before we then finally move on to these pick'ems, I legitimately thought Indiana would be 4-2 with losses to Iowa. Well, I thought they were going to
be 2-1 in that stretch at the beginning.
I thought that they would lose to either Iowa or Cincinnati, and then I thought they would definitely lose to Penn State. I thought that Penn State was underrated coming into this season, even when they were ranked like 19 or whatever. So I was high on Penn State. I thought they would lose one of those 2 games. I thought Michigan State would be a lot worse. And so I thought that they would
I mean, you had them in 14th, and you have been getting hell for that on Twitter.
Yeah. And so, I did. I had them low. Hey, and for good purpose. If you want to come at me if you're a Michigan State fan, by all means, because I was dead wrong about Michigan State. But anyway, I thought point of the story is I didn't think they would be this bad. I didn't think they'd have to win a game to get to 3-3. I thought they would be 4-2 with the possibility that maybe Cincinnati or Iowa was better than we expected. And I guess that turned out to be true. But I think Indiana is worse than what we expected too.
Yeah. And like I said, I attributed most of it to Penix wasn't what we thought he was, and obviously the play calling has been disastrous. Let's move on, because Indiana's not playing this week. It's bye week instead of whoever it may be week. So I'll make that joke 500 more times. That won't be funny. So we starting off, we've got Maryland at number 7 Ohio State. Now, I think a lot of people would have predicted this to be much closer had they performed well against Iowa. But based on that and the way that Ohio State seems to be finding their footing, I think it's – I don't want to say easy to say because anything can happen. I think it's fairly safe to say that Ohio State should handle this one.
I'm going to say Ohio State wins too. It might be different. I would like to see that game, that Maryland-Iowa game again. I think Iowa still wins, but if Dante Demas doesn't get hurt, if they don't turn the ball over – immediately after going down 10-7, I would like to see how that game plays out because I think it's a little bit closer. But yeah, I think Ohio State's going to roll in this one.
Yeah, and we'll really see if they really have found their complete footing as these Big Ten games roll on. Moving on, we got number 11 Michigan State at Rutgers. Rutgers last year, the team that really sent Michigan State spiraling, which it's. I'm kind of about to get off topic again. I'll try to keep it short, but back to the thing about last year being an anomaly. It seems like all of the teams that were pretty terrible last year have bounced back, and the ones that took advantage of the COVID year, like Indiana and Iowa State, are completely reeling. And maybe that part of it could I see, and I don't see Northwestern so much as a part of that because I feel like Northwestern just goes through this cycle anyway, where they go from being completely horrible to Big Ten West contenders.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's fair. Yeah.
So anyway, back to what I was saying, Michigan State at Rutgers, they lost last year. Was the game played at Rutgers last year? It is this year?
In East Lansing.
Okay. And it didn't really matter. The fans weren't really a factor, but it was the game that people were saying the Shiano movement was in full effect, getting the first Big Ten win in I don't know how many years. But it definitely put them on the map, and it could be a tough outing for Sparty. Who knows?
I think it will be. I think that when you look at the depth and the talent that Ohio State has, it's hard for Rutgers to stay on the same field. I think this is a close game, but I think Michigan State gets revenge. I don't think they're going to turn the ball over. They've been really good with protecting the football this season, so I think that's the difference in this game. I think Michigan State probably wins maybe 10 to 14 points, maybe around a 2-score game, I think, for Michigan State.
And Kenneth Walker, man, there's no ignoring him anymore.
Oh, no.
I think that's safe to say. And that's crazy. Where did he come from? I know he's a transfer. Where did he come from?
Wake Forest, I believe, yeah.
Wake Forest is a good team without him. So evidently
they're the only undefeated team in the ACC.
Or maybe who knows how good the ACC actually is. But anyway, so I don't know if I said, but I'm taking Michigan State as well. Moving on, 3 more games. We have a short slate this week, which is good. I'm tired of going through 10, however many we were talking about earlier. So we're pretty much in full. I don't think there are any non-conference games left either. So we should see this the rest of the season. Next we have Wisconsin at Illinois, and I'm glad I saw your tweet earlier. This is a game between two of the worst red zone efficiency offenses. I don't know if it's in the country or in the Big Ten.
They might be in the country, but I only looked at the Big Ten. They're 13th and 14th in total scores in the red zone, or scoring percentage in the red zone, and touchdown percentage in the red zone.
So is this game going to be the first person to score, period, wins the game?
I mean, I don't know how this game is going to go down. Wisconsin's offense, first of all, I really don't know how either team's going to move the ball. And this is the reason why. I don't know how Illinois' offense is going to move the ball against Wisconsin's defense. And I don't know if Wisconsin's going to stop stepping on its own toes on the offensive side. Like, I don't think Illinois' defense is going to be the one that stops Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's offense is going to stop with Wisconsin. Having said
Do you
that,
think? Oh, go ahead.
I think
Continue.
Wisconsin is more talented, so I think they're going to win the game. But that offense is not. I mean, we talk about Indiana's offense being bad. Wisconsin's potentially could be worse.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Do you think? And they don't have injury issues. Graham Mertz is. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, Graham Mertz is fully healthy, correct?
Well, he went out. He and tight end Jake Ferguson left the game against Michigan early, and I think they're both questionable this week against Illinois. So that if they're not healthy, then I mean, Graham Mertz is. I hate to say this, he's been awful. So I don't know. Maybe a change, just like we talked about with Indiana. Maybe a change under center for them will help. I don't know, but. I mean, I don't. Wisconsin. I don't know what else to say. I've said Wisconsin times. The defense is outstanding. The offense is terrible.
Very, very similar to Indiana. That would be another if Indiana were to play Wisconsin this year. 2 yards in a cloud of dust, whatever you want to call that. I'm also taking Wisconsin. These next two, I guess, I feel like they've been getting more interesting as we go on.
They are.
We got number 9 Michigan at Nebraska, and man, oh man, I keep going back to your Twitter. I'm not going to kiss ass. I'm not going to do it. But you're one of my favorite Twitter accounts to follow just because you've got – I don't know what you dig through during the day, but you're always throwing out stuff that I'm just like, man, that is a really interesting point. And I think it was – you had a list of stats that were right next to each other. And the other thing that you posted along with it, or maybe it was separate, was the fact that someone's coach is going to be under fire if they don't win this game. And it's true. I mean, you got Scott Frost, who is trying to prove that he's even worthy to be in the Big Ten as a head coach. And you got Jim Harbaugh, who's been told that he hasn't done anything since he's been there, even though he's had several successful winning seasons. Do you think there's any outcome where, like, if it's a close game and somebody hits a last-second field goal, that those things don't come up?
No, because let's say if you're Jim Harbaugh, you just lost to a 3-3 Nebraska team, and nobody's going to care how you lost. They're just going to look at Nebraska's playing a lot better than they were in that Week 0 game. So nobody cares. They're going to look at the record. They're going to say, "Wow, Nebraska hasn't beaten a ranked opponent since 2016, I think it is. They haven't been to a bowl game. They're 3-3 this season. They lost their 3 games against Illinois, Oklahoma, and Michigan State, and you couldn't beat them." On the other side, if Nebraska loses a close game, that's Scott Frost is then 5-16, I believe, in one possession games. 16. So even if that, and then you look at the blowout, you just got, again, Jim Harbaugh, they got blown out by a bad Nebraska team. That's going to be the narrative. Or if Michigan blows out Nebraska, well, Nebraska was a one-hit wonder. They can only beat teams. Because the thing you have to remember about Nebraska right now, they looked really good. They've looked good in their 3 wins. They even looked good against Michigan State. They looked good against Oklahoma. Their wins are against Fordham, Buffalo, and Northwestern.
That's true.
I'm going to give away my pick here, but these are the games that Nebraska has lost because of special teams errors, because of pre-snap penalties, because of ill-timed mistakes, turnover, all that stuff. I actually think this will be a one-possession game, and I think Nebraska's on the wrong end of it again because it's kind of like I'll believe it when I see it. And I think Nebraska is more than capable. I think that defense is more than capable of winning this game. But it's kind of fool me once, fool me twice. Well, fool me 15 times, and I'm not going to pick you to win this game because, again, special teams matter. Not turning the ball over in crucial situations matters. Penalties matter. And in these type of games, those have been what cost Nebraska. So I can't pick them in this game, even though I think it's going to be a good game, and I think they are a better team than they're being given credit.
And I think that's true. I've heard numerous people, and I think I'm on their side, say that Nebraska is the best 3-loss team in the country. But that's obviously all speculation. And that's a weird thing to say, right? Isn't that a weird thing to say, though? But yeah, especially Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that I won't interrupt you too much. I think your point is right. I think that they're better than people give them credit. I think
Yeah.
I think you can kind of throw that Illinois anomaly out the window. I think that was legitimately, and we talk about anomalies. I think that's legitimately an anomaly. It just sounds funny.
If we had titled our episode, that would easily be our episode title today. Sorry, I'm saying ridiculous things again.
It's funny to me when you say they're the best 3-loss team in the country and nobody's played more than 5 or 6 games. It's different if they were 8-3.
Yeah, imagine if it was week 3 and they were 0-3 and somebody said they were the best.
Yeah.
So moving on to what is likely, even though it's not college game day, it is Fox Big Noon Kickoff. What is not likely? It is easily the top game on the bill this week. Number 4 Penn State at number 3 Iowa. A potential look at the Big Ten championship game, depending on how the rest of the seasons play out. But I mean, this is. I don't really even know where to start because my mind goes right to all of the speculation of, is the Big Ten really a big deal? Paul Feinbaum, I've been reading all that stuff and I know it's I know it's a thing for ratings and it really fires up everybody when people from the SEC say stuff about the Big Ten. I really don't feel like you see much of that from the Big Ten media unless it's, and if you do, it's not fiery like the SEC. Like the SEC prides themselves, and the media within the SEC prides themselves on being the big bad boys of college football. It doesn't matter that Alabama and Georgia rule it. They like to rile on the fact that they're just so deep. But can you really be that deep when you have the same people in the college football playoff every year? And I know the Big Ten has done that too. But are you really that far ahead of the other conferences?
That's my biggest gripe. And let me say this. I think Alabama and Georgia are the 2 best teams in college football right now based on what we've seen. I don't think there's any way you can say the SEC is better than the Big Ten top to bottom. I don't think I wouldn't say that's accurate for a 14-team league. Here's the thing that drives me nuts. Never once have I said that the SEC doesn't have the best team or the best 2 teams in college football. Never once have I said that the SEC is not better than the Big Ten. I think most years you can make the argument that the SEC is better than the Big Ten. The problem to me is the SEC views the Big Ten the way the Big Ten views the MAC, if that makes sense.
Well, that's true. They love to talk about the teams that are doing well and say things specific. I don't remember who said it, but they said Penn State would be 4th in the SEC West.
Yeah, Greg McElroy. Yep.
Yeah. So what is it with your obsession? Like I said, I know being in media what it is. It's about ratings. You love to say things like that. I don't know if they truly mean it, but what is the point in when you see another conference having success? Why not just talk about what you have instead of what the other conferences are doing? Why not talk about that Vandy UConn game actually?
Oh my God, what a great game
that was. Yeah, we're not even talking about Penn State, Iowa. This is our game of the week, and we're arguing about the Big Ten and the SEC.
We got to get back on track here because we got to focus on this. This is the game I've been waiting for since week 2 with Penn State and Iowa. I talked about both of them potentially being 5-0 and salivating over that. And
you're getting your dream come
true. And I'm getting this is my dream game right here, right now in week 6. So this is going to be fun. I don't know. I could flip a coin. I could change my mind on this every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I think I trust Penn State's offense slightly more than Iowa's offense. Slightly.
You mean than Iowa's defense?
No, I mean that Iowa's. I think Iowa's defense is better than Penn State's defense, but I think Penn State's offense is better than Iowa's offense. And I think that the gap between Iowa's offense and Penn State's offense is wider than the gap between Iowa's defense and Penn State's defense, if that makes any sense to anybody. So for that reason, I picked Penn State to win this game. I'm not going to be, like I said, I'll change my mind probably tomorrow and give you 10 reasons why I think Iowa's going to win. But I think Spencer Petras has played amazing the last 3 games. He hasn't in those 3 games. The defenses haven't been great. I think Sean Clifford is a little more battle tested. I think Penn State saved something offensively in their game against Indiana for Iowa. I think they saved a few wrinkles. So I just I think Penn State's going to win. I think they're going to escape. It's going to be a classic Penn State-Iowa game that comes down to the wire. I just think Penn State makes one more play offensively than Iowa does.
Now, though I agree with you on Penn State's abilities on offense, we've seen Sean Clifford make mistakes. He made some against Indiana, and Indiana has a good defense.
Yep.
But Iowa has a defense that's playing, I guess I don't want to say exactly like 2020 Indiana, but man, are they turnover machines. And Sean Clifford last year against Indiana was a turnover machine. I believe he had 3 picks, and that was the difference in the game. And that's where I think it's going to come down to in this one. I'm taking Iowa over Penn State, and it's going to be turnover problems for Penn State. And I think that's going to solidify Iowa as a defensive juggernaut, not only in the Big Ten, but in the entire country. And I think we could be looking at that point, and people will start to talk about Iowa versus Alabama or Iowa versus Georgia, because I do believe I was looking at the stop rate stats and stuff today. Iowa and Georgia were one of the top ones. Another thing that sticks out to me, South Alabama, Kane Womack's current, he was number 3. And so was Iowa number 1 in that and Georgia number 2?
I don't remember. I didn't look at as closely at it. I'd have to look at it again. I really don't remember.
I only noticed it because somebody pointed out that Kane Womack's team was number 3, and that just stood out. But that's what I think is going to be the difference. I think Sean Clifford's a great quarterback, and I think Penn State and Mike Yurcich run a fantastic offense. That's what really made me understand how bad Nick Sheridan was, is because Penn State had a plan of attack for everything. It didn't matter what Indiana was throwing at them, and Indiana has a good defense. But Mike Yurcich has an answer for practically anything that you can show him. The other side of it, though, is what I think will make the difference. Iowa, I don't know how many times they'll turn over Sean Clifford, but it's going to be the difference in the game. That's what I'm going with.
That's a good prediction. I think I could very much see that happening. Iowa leads the nation in interceptions with 12, total turnovers in 16, and turnover margin in 12. So it easily could come down to that. I liked what I've seen out of Sean Clifford. 2 of those interceptions have been kind of meaningless. So last week's against Indiana was the real only meaningful one. So we'll see. I mean, Taulia Tagovailoa had been playing excellent football up until he ran into Iowa and tossed 5 interceptions. So we'll see what happens.
Like I said, even if Clifford does throw interceptions, I don't think Penn State's a bad team unless they just get blown out by Iowa. Maybe there could be an argument for that. But I think that would just say more about how awesome Iowa would be if they got blown out.
Bingo.
So yeah, there you have it. Man, we're running on about a little over an hour 20. This has to be our longest one, but man, it has been fun. Charlie Miller, Mitchell Paige, a lot of good Big Ten games this week, and we get to, at least from the Indiana perspective, we get to sit back and take it all in while they get ready for Michigan State here soon. Dustin, you got any last words before we say goodnight to the fellow listeners?
Just enjoy it. You know that IU's not gonna lose this weekend. So
that's true.
Stress-free college football weekend. That's the best kind of college football weekend.
That's right. Be sure to listen to Indiana Sports Beat Monday through Friday. Dustin on Thursdays with us, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy football this weekend, and thanks for listening.